first ministerial meeting of the EU-India Trade and Technology Council. I'm joined here by Executive Vice President Margrethe Vestager and Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis for the European Commission side, as well as by the Indian Minister for External Affairs, Dr. Jaishankar, the Minister of Commerce and Industry, Minister Goyal, and Minister of State Chandrasekhar, responsible for skill development, entrepreneurship, electronics, and information technology. The co-chairs will start with a few words of introduction, and then we have time for a few questions. And without further ado, I give the floor to Executive Vice President Margrethe Vestager.
Well, thank you very much for this. This is the first meeting of the EU-India Trade and Technology Council. This is the format that we also have with the US, but with no one else. It has been very promising 2 days, I'd say. The engagement, how we see the working groups producing results already, laying out their working plans. For instance, the understanding how we will engage in high-performance computing. We will work on quantum. We have quite ambitious ideas on when it comes to tech and tech governance, looking at the impressive results of how technology has been used to shape the Indian society, for people to identify themselves, to have access to financial resources, how it was helpful during the pandemic. So all in all, very promising beginnings. And we, of course, hope to pick that up in a ministerial. Actually, we have challenged the working groups in not that many months. But I think I will leave it at this because we have limited time available for this presser. Please, my friend.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you both for the warmth, the hospitality, for the very good meeting. I agree with you. It's been a very strong start. And there is a context to what we are doing. It is in this era of volatility and uncertainty, it's important to de-risk the global economy and yet to ensure that there is very responsible growth. So a lot of what we discussed related to resilient and reliable supply chains, to trust and transparency in the digital domain, in the fact that we today will have to focus on how to get the best out of a global talent pool in a knowledge economy. So during the course of the meeting, one of our colleagues described this as a decade which is going to be shaped by technology. And our effort has been to create the trusted collaboration so that we ensure that in this era, with all its challenges, globalization remains strong, that we remain open economies, that we are able to forge ahead in various areas. We have 3 working groups that met today. We had a stakeholders consultation. And I think what was most important, we had a clear plan for how and calendar for how we're going to go ahead. So once again, a big thank you, and I think truly a very productive meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me start by once again welcoming our Indian colleagues to Brussels. It's our great honor to host the first edition of EU-India Trade and Technology Council. The EU and India are global pillars of democracy and rules-based economic opportunity. We share many values and strategic ambitions. In particular, we both see untapped potential in our trade and economic relations. We can do much more and we can do much better. So it is in this spirit in which we created EU-India TTC. We wanted to play a key role in unlocking this potential. We already are going full steam ahead with our negotiations on bilateral agreements on trade, investment protection and geographical indications. But these agreements will not cover all aspects of our trade investment relationship, and that's where the TTC comes in. It has a potential to complement and strengthen these agreements. So in particular, we agreed to focus on 4 areas in the coming years: on resilient value chains, on addressing market access issues, which is important for growing our trade relationship, our exchanges on foreign direct investment screening to better understand each other's systems, and also on global trade issues, including in a context of the upcoming 13th WTO Ministerial Conference. So to conclude, I'm delighted we have taken this important step towards a stronger EU-India partnership. So now we must show ambition and political will to deliver positive results without delay. Thank you.
Good evening, and a big thank you to our hosts for this very successful first meeting of the Trade and Technology Council. I think clearly the political guidance we received from Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi and the President of the European Union, Her Excellency Ms. Ursula von der Leyen, was truly encouraging and has set the path for an outstanding engagement, which will help us create a platform for coordination to address key issues at the nexus of trade, trusted technology, and security. We are both vibrant democracies, open market economies, pluralistic societies, and have a common interest in ensuring security, prosperity, and sustainable development. We are also looking at geopolitical issues, economic security, and the security of less developed nations, other areas of the globe where we have shared interests to maintain peace and also support their own efforts at development and achieving the sustainable development goals. I'm delighted that the FTA that we are negotiating with EU is progressing well under Valdis's leadership, and the TTC as a platform will help us to supplement the work that is happening at the free trade agreement negotiations, which will, I believe, help us in making the EU-India relationship the defining partnership of the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, dear ministers. Oh, apologies.
Okay. Thank you again. I join my colleagues in thanking everybody who made this TTC meeting a possibility. Let me just quickly bring you abreast on how we've approached the whole future of tech. Most of you will agree that the future economies of nations around the world, including the EU and India, are going to be largely impacted by innovation and the fast, rapid changes in technology and the accelerated digitalization of our economies. The TTC represents an unprecedented opportunity for India and EU to work together in shaping and defining the future of tech. It is certainly a case that can be made that the future of tech ought to be shaped by, led by, and narrated by countries that are open societies and democracies, and India and EU certainly fit that bill and are in a unique position to shape the future of tech in a way that was unprecedented before this TTC idea came to fruition. Our collaboration and our partnership will certainly cover artificial intelligence, quantum computing, semiconductor design and the whole ecosystem around semiconductors, the microelectronics and the supply chains that today represent a big threat because of the extraordinary concentration of electronic supply chains in one particular geography. All of these represent opportunities, and at the same time we believe that the TTC and the India-EU partnership can also address the issue of harmonizing rules, regulations and approach towards the internet today and the future as the internet grows and becomes much more of a decisive force in all of our economies and all of our citizens' lives. We are committed in India to making technology transform the lives of our citizens, and we believe that the India-EU partnership and the TTC can play a significant role in taking the benefits of technology and extending the power of technology to citizens in both the EU, India, and the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, dear Ministers, Executive Vice Presidents. We now have time for one or two very short questions. Please tell us your name and the media you work for, and please focus on the TTC EU-India. Andrew.
Yes, Andy Bounds from the Financial Times.
Can you use the microphone?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's Andy Bounds from the Financial Times. So, obviously, Mr. Borrell is not here today, not here now, but he was in the meeting, and he told the Financial Times before the meeting that the EU should be putting sanctions on refined oil products from India using Russian oil. I just wondered what the response of the minister was. Thanks.
Well, you're right. Mr. Borrell is not with us now, but I really don't see the basis for your question because my understanding of the Council regulations is that if Russian crude is substantially transformed in a third country, then it's not treated as Russian anymore. I would urge you to look at Council Regulation 833/2014.
I will not add to this. There is, I think, no doubt about the legal basis of the sanctions. Of course, it is a discussion that we will have with friends, but it will be with an extended hand and, of course, not with a pointed finger. That should go without saying. I hope you took the spirit of the start of the TTC, a very, very strong willingness and openness to substantially strengthen our partnership.
Okay.
I echo that.
Another question, please focus on the TTC meeting. Yes, over there. We are first.
Thank you. Barbara Moons from Politico. I had a question on the carbon border adjustment mechanism, as that we understand that there were some concerns on the Indian side and that this also came up during the TTC discussions in the joint statement.
I think between friends, it's always good to talk and talk openly and talk on a wide variety of issues. The CBAM is a mechanism that the European Union has proposed, and we remain engaged with the European Union. And I'm sure that the intention is not to create a barrier to trade, but to find a way forward so that sustainability is as much a part of our collective efforts to leave behind a better planet for the next generation. And we remain engaged. We are discussing the issue, and we have a long time ahead of us within which we'll be working together to find the right solutions to this.
Indeed, we touched upon the question of CBAM, both in our bilateral meeting with Minister Goyal yesterday and also during today's TTC meeting. Actually, in between, we had also one already dedicated expert discussion on this topic, and we agreed that the TTC is a good platform to deepen our engagement on this issue with India. I just also wanted to reiterate that when we were designing CBAM, we were, of course, very careful to ensure WTO compatibility of the initiative. And a key word for this is non-discrimination. So we apply the same price of carbon to imported goods that we are going to apply also on our domestic producers. And any price of carbon in a third country is going to be subtracted from CBAM. But indeed, we agreed we'll have continued engagement with India on this important topic.
We're running out of time. One very last, very short question. You.
Thank you very much. I'm Alex Kelly for Feature Story News. I'm reporting on behalf of Doordarshan, India. Question for both sides. On the one hand, how does India fit as part of the EU's de-risking strategy that we heard the President talking about just yesterday? And to the Indian counterparts, speaking to European business groups, some of which that you've met in the last couple of days, they say India is too protectionist and levies are too high and it's difficult for us to penetrate that market. What can you say to encourage them, to make them feel more hopeful about the future? Thank you.
For the world we live in, our economic behaviors to an increasing degree would have a possible effect on our security. That goes, for instance, for our semiconductor ecosystem, which is a global ecosystem. And it's very important for us here in Europe not to be seen as someone who is self-sufficiently trying to do everything ourselves. At the same time, we need strong partners to de-risk the supply of semiconductors. And here, what we see, very impressive initiatives in India, mirroring, complementing what we do here with the state aid approval based on the Treaty of the European Union and the CHIPS Act enabling design of chips and research and development of chips to a completely different degree. And I think that's a good example of how this partnership can give sort of muscle to the idea of de-risking rather than decoupling. Because if we want increased economic security, we need to do that through partnerships. And I think we have taken very important first steps today. This is just one example. But next, of course, of interest will be quantum. And there will be other emerging technologies developing beyond 5G, of course, is another area where the question of trusted vendors is also something that we can develop in a close partnership to put muscle on our ambitions to de-risk.
Thank you. For that matter, India's tariffs very often are misconstrued to be high. On most items of raw materials or intermediates, we are generally very low on duty. On many items of technology, many items which are helping the Indian economy grow, we have kept the duties very low. The actual applied rates are much lower than what was agreed to at the WTO as bound rates. Having said that, one must appreciate that it's a developing country of 1.4 billion people, and providing for the needs for such a large population, providing work opportunities and employment to nearly 800 million people in the working age, having the world's youngest population, and will continue to have that for 3 or 4 decades, has its own dynamics. And recognizing and respecting also our ability to compete with certain geographies which are very non-transparent. We need to keep our tariffs high on many products. At times, developed countries are the unintended consequence of the high tariffs, and which is why we are engaged in free trade agreement negotiations with the European Union. I'm sure this will give huge opportunities and openings to many businesses in India to provide high quality and innovative R&D products to India. It will also open the doors of the European Union marketplace for Indian goods of high quality at very competitive prices, which will be good for consumers in European Union, which will be good for the economies of the European Union, especially considering that they'll come from a country which is rules-based, transparent, an open economy, a democracy aligned to the way of working and thinking of the European Union.
Thank you very much indeed. This concludes our press conference.
Maybe just we worked so hard that we have not had a picture of the 5 of us. So maybe if we could ask
to take a picture.
the beautiful flags and everything.